Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is staying safe and well, and I'm excited to be on this webinar. Zapier 101 is the webinar that we're going to be on, so if you're at the wrong place, now would be the time to leave. We're going to be talking about Zapier and the automation that it empowers, particularly obviously as it relates to property management and LeadSimple and how all those things fit together. So we're going to be talking about the Zapier what, when, and why, what it is, when to use it, and why. I know there's been a lot of interest around business automation, obviously within Zapier, and well, within property management, I mean, and Zapier is a part of that conversation that we want to hit on today. I'm going to wait about 5 minutes here as everyone jumps on. If you want to say hi, let me know in chat where you're coming from. I know most of you, obviously, that are coming on this call. And this is a webinar that will be the first in a series. Hey, Aaron, great to see you. So yeah, today we're focusing, like the webinar says, on Zapier. And particularly, hey, Billy, great to have you on. And it will focus particularly on automations that are applicable to you guys. So a lot of people don't really have an idea about what Zapier is, what it can do, and it can be really somewhat confusing as you're trying to implement automation. So today I want to talk about kind of the high level first, and then ultimately by the end of the call, we're going to actually get into the nuts and bolts of building out a simple Zapier integration to automate a part of a process that we see very frequently. And then we'll provide a full list at the end of a bunch of ideas and different integrations that we've seen people build with some links as well to resources as you can learn further. So we're going to wait just a little bit longer here to make sure everyone can hop on that registered, and then we'll jump right into this slide deck, go through that first. Hey, Dale. Hey, Tiffany. Also, I want to mention that this is recorded, and the link to the recording will be included in the follow-up email, as well as the slide deck and a list of all the Zapier automations and integrations ideas that we're going to go over. And then also, this recording is actually still accessible at this same URL. So you'll be able to come back here and share it with anyone that couldn't make it. And as far as that, yep, follow-up email that will come out afterwards. Okay, we're almost, a few more minutes here. So for those of you that have just joined, the purpose of this webinar is to introduce Zapier, what it is, when to use it, how to use it. We'll introduce what Zapier is. We'll explain what it's useful for and when you should and shouldn't use it. We'll demonstrate how to create a Zap. It's what they call, which is an integration. That can help you in your business, as well as talk about a bunch of other automations that Zapier would make possible that will be specific for property managers. So we'll end as well with a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, there's an Ask a Question bar at the bottom of the page, and that would be where to ask questions. Oh yeah, Dale, that's exactly. We're going to talk about when to use zippers. Well, it'd be good to use them on a daily basis and make sure that your clothes, your zippers are always zipped up as well. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. All right, so we're just over right about 11:05, so we're going to kick off. A lot of other people have joined in, so that's great. Thank you all for coming. And again, we're just going to dive in. So we're going to start with introducing Zapier. So what is Zapier? Zapier is a software platform that is built to integrate hundreds, I think up to a few thousand now, different software providers together to transfer data in between them and trigger different actions. Okay, so that's obviously high level, but ultimately, a quick example of that would be you can actually create an integration to send yourself a text message when a lead opens an email. And it's infinitely bigger than that in terms of the different things that you can do through Zapier. But that particular integration of triggering a text when a lead opens one of your emails that you've sent them through LeadSimple. We're going to actually build that today at the end of the call. So fairly simple Zap that we'll be building. But yeah, Zapier doesn't require development knowledge. It just requires a decent amount of software fluency and using computers. So you don't need to be a developer to use Zapier. It also allows you to automate different parts of your business and save time, removing some manual work so you can focus on more important tasks. So when people talk about Zapier, they get really excited, or really when people just talk about process automation, they get really excited. So again, if you have any questions as I go through this, I want you to ask them in the ask a question or in the chat area, and then we'll get to them at the end of the call. Anyway, people get really excited about automating different parts of their process, but what we see consistently is that people jump in and they try to do too much too fast before they even understand what they're trying to do. So starting with the right mindset is critical. So how should you approach Zapier? We very much encourage people to start with why, and that applies to your process. If any of you have read Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why, I'd highly recommend it. But it's a principle that's critical to automation as well as all of life. So first of all, you don't know your why before you actually have outlined your process. So we have a few other webinars that you guys have full access to on our blog, and we'll link to them in our follow-up email as well, on a framework for thinking about your processes within your business. And I encourage you to go and rewatch those if you haven't seen them. But until you have a defined process that you can run through in a manual way, you shouldn't be looking at automation. You automate after you have defined a process and you're running it through in a more manual fashion. Then that's when you get the juices rolling and you think about how can we automate more pieces of this. And the example we're going to walk through today is, as I'm going through my sales process, I have some important emails that I want to respond to very quickly. And so I'm going to build a Zapier integration to notify me via text and say, hey, John Smith just opened your email that you sent them. And it basically allows me to kind of spy on them. So I'll be able to jump in to LeadSimple on my phone through the mobile app if you have iOS, or on the mobile website on Android, and I'll be able to actually respond or do something based on the fact that they just opened the email, because I know they're reading it. So that's just a brief example. What Zapier is not. It's important to come to Zapier with the right expectations, okay? So Zapier is not is a standalone service. It's not affiliated with LeadSimple. It's a software provider that LeadSimple integrates, as well as tons of other software. So Google, Slack, Microsoft, thousands of people integrate with Zapier, which allows you to trigger different events in other software based on what's happening in LeadSimple or what's happening in Google, or if you get an email, you can trigger things in LeadSimple. I'll go through a full list of ideas on integrations and automations at the end, but Zapier is not a do-it-all solution. It's best at connecting softwares that you already use together, and Zapier can be used very powerfully. It can also be a nightmare if you're trying to use it in an incorrect way. So I'm going to try to teach you all how to use it properly and how to leverage its power. All right. So next slide. So how should you approach Zapier? Like I talked about, you need to start with the why, the goal and desired outcome of the process you're working on. And basically, if you start at the beginning with your owner onboarding process and you're like, oh, what can we automate with all this, before you've really defined what the steps are, then you just come up with a bunch of different ideas and you start building automation through Zapier or other platforms without actually having a complete process that's working. Before you are adding a lot of automation, You need to have a process that is defined enough, it's running, your team is using it, and then I think Zapier can really help with that as well. So it can help automate things that you do regularly. Another example of that we've seen quite a bit is triggering a process, let's say. So triggering your rental application process based on a AppFolio notification email that someone submitted a application, or a Rently or tenant turner notification. That's another example. Again, I'll get into more examples at the end. But that's something that you would have to do manually. Generally, you'd have to create the process manually, but you can set up through Zapier to make it automated. So it triggers it. Automated emails can go out right away at the beginning of the process. A lot of pieces of your day-to-day job can be simplified. But again, get to automation after you have a working manual process. All right, so this is how Zapier works. So I want to explain kind of high level how it works. Zapier integrations are comprised of two main parts. The first is the trigger. Okay, so it is what triggers your action. So you have triggers and actions in Zapier. So it's pretty straightforward. As people talk about processes, a lot of times, and in our framework for thinking about processes, we start with the trigger. What starts this process? In Zapier, that's the same thing. As you're building an integration, you need to know what starts this. An example of a trigger is a lead opens an email, or a process changes a stage, or a process is created. You can trigger another process. Different things like that. And then you can have multiple actions that happen after that trigger. So you could generate a document when a process changes into a certain stage, or a lead changes into a certain stage. You can even send things via DocuSign and automate pieces like that. So again, you start with a manual process and then move into adding the automation. Don't jump into messing with automation first. You need to actually think about your process in a more manual fashion, which is what most of you are already doing. Automation is an augmentation of a working process that you already have, and then it can drastically improve it. But it's not where you start. So basically, think of a trigger as, if this happens, then the action should happen. So if the trigger happens, then the action should happen. So if this, then that, pretty much. So yeah, I think a lot of you have messed around. There are many people that have just messed around with Zapier, but never really got it across the finish line. So today I want to, hopefully that helps give you an idea of maybe some of the reason why it hasn't got across the finish line, and explain at least a few of the basics on that. As you guys have questions, again, feel free to ask them in chat or the ask a question section as well. And I'll get to those at the end of the call or throughout the call as I look at that. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually jump into Zapier and start talking about a demonstration of how to actually build a Zap. So again, we have triggers, actions, different software that you use. And before I jump into that, I want to give you a few examples of different things that we could do with Zapier. The first one that we're actually going to build out today is triggering text notifications when a lead opens an email. But I can also show you that you can do far more than just trigger a text. You could trigger a text, then send an email, then update a Google spreadsheet, then, it's infinite in terms of what you can do on the action end of things. You can have one trigger, but multiple actions. So obviously Zapier is a separate service. It's something that we just integrate with, along with the vast majority of other software providers integrate with Zapier. So most of what you use on a daily basis, your Google apps, Microsoft, they integrate here, and you can use them and have access to them. So I'm logged in here to my Zapier account, and we're going to create a Zap using LeadSimple. All right, so the first step of creating a Zap. Let me know if you guys can all see this. Looks like you can. So we're going to name it first because I like just having a good name. So text me when a lead opens an email. All right. So first thing you're going to do is look up LeadSimple. All right, sweet. And so we choose the app, LeadSimple, and then we're going to pick the different trigger. Okay, so you can see all these examples, and this might get your creative juices going. I'm going to get into a list of other ideas after this and talk about different integrations you can build. But one of them here, so we have lead created you could use, lead changes stage, lead opens email, lead changes pipeline, lead change, their tags change, it's reassigned, there's a task created process. So lots of options here, obviously, call completed, different things you can do. I'm going to use lead opens email, okay, and then hit continue. And then you will log into your LeadSimple account using your API key. We'll have instructions in the email, but it's very simple. Zapier will walk you through where to get your API key in LeadSimple. I'm not going to show it on the call, so I don't expose that credential, but I have logged in here already, and I'm going to hit continue. So you can use your API key to interact with Zapier, and that's accessible under Settings, Integrations, Zapier within LeadSimple. And now I have my trigger set up, and you actually hit the test button. So Zapier has a really good user experience and flow overall, and I'm walking you guys through that. So now what's important is we actually, Zapier tested that trigger. It actually has reached out to LeadSimple, and it's grabbed a recent lead that is open in email. So here's an example. The name is test. I'm actually, they give you different options. So I'm just going to look through these really quick. And this is all the data I have access to use later. So use Rolf, and he's an all property management lead. He's in the signed agreement stage with his status of 1, and all this data you can use in your actions of the Zap. So I don't want to go too fast. If you guys have any questions, again, feel free to ask here in the chat or in the ask a question area. So now that we've selected our lead, which is a real lead that's in our LeadSimple account that Zapier has fetched. So this is a recent lead that's opened in email. Then I'm gonna hit continue. And now you can see the Zapier saying, hey, your trigger's all set up, looking good, that's great. Now what I'm gonna do, Zapier has, at this point, we can do tons of different actions. But Zapier actually has a native SMS integration to send text messages. So I don't have to pay anything more or set up that, but I want a custom text message to come to me when a lead opens an email. So send SMS, that's what I'm gonna do. You set up a little SMS account with your cell phone number or whichever team member you want that to be set up for. So I've already set that up, pretty simple to do. And I just got a test from them to confirm it's working. And now I get to customize this text message. So I can choose from their numbers. This is just a Zapier number, so I can add it as a contact into my phone so I know it's a notification. And now this is the coolest part with Zapier. I can pass real data from LeadSimple into this message, so into the actual text message. So I have lots of options here, obviously, from that lead. So property information, assignee, when it was created, the name. I'm just gonna go kind of simple here and say name, just opened your email. Okay, so now every time a lead opens an email, I'm going to get their name and it's gonna say, Rolf, just opened your email, and I'll be able to jump into LeadSimple and handle that. And obviously, this is just a very simple example of some automation you can add to help keep you on track. You can obviously also, I don't know how many of you use Slack or different notifications. I could add notification to Slack. I could do any number of things in terms of notifications. I could notify people via Google Hangouts, send emails, do anything with this action when a lead opens an email. So this is obviously really simple. We just have a trigger and then one action to send the SMS. I can hit test and continue. Great. And it's saying, yep, everything is successful. And Zapier's telling me, hey, your Zap is ready to turn on. So my integration is ready to go. The automation with this is ready. I can hit the on button and now it's turned on. So it's awesome. It's ready to go. Next lead that opens an email within my LeadSimple account, I will get a SMS notification right away. So super cool. And that's the first example that I wanted to show you all. What's neat here too is I can go back to that Zap and you can add more actions. So if there were other things I wanted to do. So when a lead opens an email, I can send a text message. Maybe you wanted to update a Google Sheet based on that lead's name to say, hey, this user is interacting with us, or it's really limitless. So if I look at Google Sheets, then you could do that. Or maybe I want to add them to Google Contacts right here. Then you can do that after the SMS has been sent. You know, create a contact, add a contact to a group, update the contact. So as you can see, here's just some brief examples. Now I'm going to jump back into another few things I want to show, I guess, about Zapier. So you can keep tabs on your Zap by looking at the task history for that Zap. So Zapier has a really great way of looking at the different the history of your Zap and how often it's used, and they have really good reporting on that as well. You'll get emails for that on, I believe, a weekly or at least a monthly basis. And yeah, basically a lead opening an email, that will show up here. It will be a full task log. You'll have all the data and allow you to really look at that and debug anything as you're going along. Yeah, and then your dashboard here shows your your Zaps, show the different Zaps that you have, and you can see I just have, that's the only one that I have on currently. But you can have pretty much an infinite number of Zaps after you get a handle on it and start creating them. So that is quite a bit there. I'm going to jump back here and talk a little bit about some other Zapier integrations that we've seen pretty common. So let's jump back into Zapier, I guess, hit create a Zap. And another example that we've seen a lot of demand for is generating a document when a lead or a process changes a stage. So when you think about property management, obviously you guys have lots of documents that are involved in the process. Particularly in the sales process, you have your PMA. So your property management agreement, generally you are supporting e-signature. Many of you still are on paper, and there's a lot of opportunity there to smooth out that process, obviously, and automate some things. One of those requires you to generate a document based on a template. So obviously that requires that you have a template. Zapier integrates with DocuSign and most other e-signature providers that you'd probably be using, Adobe as well, I believe, and others. So you can actually trigger. So when a lead changes stages in LeadSimple, then you could trigger generating a document and sending it in DocuSign. So that's a great example. Another way I've been encouraging people, if you do use Google to manage your email as well as Google Apps to manage your business, then Google Docs actually supports templates now in a way that's really cool. And we can have a link to that in the follow-up email as well on how to generate a document based on a Google Docs template. It's really, really neat. But again, I'm just going to walk you guys through this really quick so you see the basic steps of creating a Zap. Is if a lead changes stages, then we hit continue. use the LeadSimple account that we're signed into, test our trigger, make sure it's working, and we get to take a look at the leads that come back, select the lead we want. I think I'm gonna use Rolf again, and you get the stage and the name. And the next thing I'm actually going to do is, obviously you only want to generate the document when the lead moves to a particular stage. So I am going to actually use, they have this filter step as part of your Zap, and it's really cool how you can set this up. So stage name contains agreement. Obviously you can be as verbose or not as you want. And basically that allows, this Zap will only continue if the stage name that the lead is changing into includes agreement. Okay, so pretty straightforward. So we'll only do this next step if that happens, and then we can do Google Docs and move forward there with actually creating a document from a template. So super cool action. And obviously you could use DocuSign instead if that's what we wanted to do. So DocuSign right here, then we can create a signature request and send that as a document. So as you can see, it's pretty limitless on options with setting this up and transferring data from LeadSimple based on a trigger into other platforms. Now, another thing we haven't mentioned is, what about changes in other platforms pushing things into LeadSimple? So a great example of that is, let's say, creating a process or triggering a process based on a email notification. Okay, so that's a super common automation that we've seen people implement ever since we've launched processes, and it's based on taking a notification email, wherever it could be. It could be from Rently, it could be from AppFolio, Propertyware, it could be from anywhere, basically, and then parsing out that data and triggering a process based on it. So good example would be triggering the tenant application process when you get a notification that from AppFolio or however you manage tenant applications, to create a process in LeadSimple with the appropriate property, add the tenant information from that email, and you're off to the races. So that's a really cool automation because then it automatically assigns the process to the person you want it to be assigned to. I guess I could just show an example of that really quick too, how that might work. So you can use Zapier's email parser. Again, we're gonna have a full list of these ideas with some links in the follow-up email as well as the blog post after the fact, so you don't have to worry about remembering all of this. But we'll be covering that as well. So the email parser by Zapier, you can use to basically trigger anything based on a new email that comes into your inbox. It allows you to parse the data out of that email and then use it to trigger a, let's say if we want to do LeadSimple and trigger a process. So LeadSimple, then we can do create process, and we can actually create a process based on that email that has come in and been parsed out. So we can set the name, comments, choose the process type we want, stage we want to start in, the user, tags, as well as any custom information that we've added as well. So that's super cool. So if we wanted to create the tenant application process, then we can do that and set all of these values based on an email. So you can automate those pieces. Another example is adding leads and customers from a spreadsheet. So you can create leads when a spreadsheet is edited. So we see that a lot as well. Basically, jump back here, you can create a Zap, Google Sheets, let's say you're using, then we can say new spreadsheet row. So when there's a new spreadsheet row added to a particular spreadsheet, then we can create a lead. So LeadSimple right here. Obviously, I would need to sign into Google Sheets up there and finish that and select the spreadsheet. but then we can create a lead in LeadSimple based on that new spreadsheet row in whatever sheet and worksheet that we are looking at. So that's really common. See a lot of people that like to have that. Another one that's common in terms of getting things into LeadSimple, creating data within LeadSimple, is Facebook ads. We're gonna have a video coming out on this hopefully soon as well. But if you look up Facebook, yeah, so a lot of you use Facebook lead ads. You can actually use that in Zapier to create a lead in LeadSimple, and then obviously you can start all your automation on the LeadSimple end because you can have automated emails that go out right away, as well as you're assigning your tasks right away and automate that piece so you don't have to manually create your Facebook leads after they come in. And it's more of a direct integration. So you'd sign into Facebook leads, and then you would jump down into here, do LeadSimple again, and then create a lead based on that in the pipeline that is appropriate to that particular ad. Because you might have different ads, different pages, and you can filter the type of lead that you want to create by adding another filter step here based on the page that's returned from that Facebook lead, and continue to create the appropriate lead in LeadSimple based on the information from the Facebook lead. So as you can see, that's super powerful and useful to do that and get data actually into LeadSimple, as well as trigger different actions based on changes that happen in LeadSimple. So it really helps you have a tighter integration with the softwares that you use and do some really cool things. So another thing you can do is when a lead opens an email, like we just did, to send, instead of just sending a text message, you could actually change the stage of that lead. So you could update that lead and say, you know, if they're in a nurturing, let's say they're in a nurturing stage in your sales pipeline and they open an email, then you can say, oh, well, cool, they opened an email. I want it to actually update a stage. So you can move them into a more active pipeline stage. So that's really cool that you way that you can automate that, and you don't have to manage your list as much based on when they are actually interacting with you. So that's more of a marketing thing. Yeah, another one that we see people do is updating the Google contact list when new leads come in. So that's possible. You can also, really cool one, is you could send letters and postcards when a lead is has changed stages. So if I go to LeadSimple and say, okay, right here, when a lead changes a stage to, let's say, maybe agreement sent, something like that, or whatever our WAN stage is at the end of our sales process, then we could send them a welcome note. Just running through this. Continue, make sure my trigger is set up. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Law, but it's a really cool service to send postcards and letters as well. Yeah, so you basically can set up your own designs in a Lob account and have it automatically get sent at a particular point in your process. Super cool integration we've seen people use, obviously. In postcards and letters, a lot of people view that as dated, but it's actually still a pretty effective way to get in front of people's faces, particularly since a lot of people have abandoned it. That's up to your own discretion too, and how you want to market, but we've seen it be effective for multiple companies. So that's something to keep in mind. Another more complicated one, all of you, I'm sure, love government forms. And again, we're gonna have a full list of this at the end of this call. That will be in the follow-up email as well as the blog post, so you don't have to try to keep track of all these ideas. But another great way to save time is to help generate government forms. So all of you love the government forms that are part of your job, I'm sure. I'm sure they're just a blast to fill out and really fun. The most fun, I know, and obviously I'm being facetious, is generating non-sufficient funds or eviction forms. That is a pain, and it's a big pain. You have to do it sometimes on a monthly basis, depending on your region, and that is something you can actually integrate and do via Zapier as well. And we've had clients do that. And it's been, it definitely takes some time to work out the kinks with that, but it's been really neat automation. So there's options for filling in PDFs. So you'd obviously want the exact government PDF. PDF Filler has turned out to be a really good resource there. And they have a Zapier integration that's good. So you can fill out a form, have a signature already embedded in that form, and even send it off if you wanted to. But you can have a fillable PDF. You can upload that back into LeadSimple, or you can add a note back into LeadSimple with the link to that form if you have an eviction process, and keep track of everything. So again, Zapier is really limitless. You don't need a developer, but you do need to be thinking logically about automations, and you really can only think logically about automations after you have a working understanding of how the manual process works. Until you have that, put automations as a secondary thing and work on actually defining and systematizing your business, because you're already doing it in a more manual way. And once you have that defined and implemented in a software solution like LeadSimple, then you can add these really cool automations on top of it to continue to improve your team members' time and saving that. And then you got to keep tabs on it and update it over time as well. So the integration Zapier's got a really good handling for that overall. So if there's ever a problem with your Zap, they'll notify you, and you'll be able to jump in and have an opportunity to update things as the different softwares change. And obviously, as your needs change, you can edit things and walk through that process. So we'll include a little bit more Zapier information as well. But again, automation comes secondary to actually defining a manual process well. All right, there's so much more. Those are just a few examples. Again, we'll have a full list of that and some videos as well that we've already recorded on different integrations that we've built for different clients. And we're going to be expanding on that over time. I could see, based on feedback, we may do more webinars around this, or at least small videos to show you guys on the different really cool automations that you can build into your business. And yeah, we're just looking forward to getting feedback from any of you. So I'd like to take a few questions if there are any. A lot of people really just mess around with Zapier. They never really dive deep or actually make it successful. And in some part, that it depends on the company. It depends on how much of a tech savvy person you have. It's something that you can definitely reach out about. We'd always be helpful with answering questions with Zapier and helping you get it to work for you. But our emphasis is always on making sure that you understand the magic, and that's something that you're empowered to change over time. So that's something that we really emphasize, and that's why we're doing webinars like this, to just increase awareness of the type of automation that you guys could be taking advantage of within your business, and how LeadSimple integrates with all these different softwares through Zapier. So yeah, Zapier has a good, I think, 30-day trial as well. So if that's something you want to give it a try, and obviously feel free to reach out if you run into any little snags right at the beginning. There's always a bit of a learning curve with new software, and Zapier is no exception to that. So you'd want to set aside some time to do that. And all right, so David's got a question. Will one Zap work for all members in a team, or does the Zap need to be created for each person? It depends on what you're doing. If you are doing like I just did, SMS notification, based on when a lead opens an email, then I would need to add multiple actions to send to the different team members and send to their mobile numbers. But if, let's say, the vast majority of the other Zaps that I discussed that will be listed in the follow-up would apply across the account. It's not just user specific. It can be based on how you set it up, because you could set up filters, but the vast majority of the time you are doing this on all leads within a particular pipeline, regardless of what user they're assigned to. but it's flexible. You could set it up. So if I want to say lead changes stage in LeadSimple, and I wanted to make sure that only the leads that change the stage that have the assignee that Bob is assigned to, or Matt is assigned to. So I'm going to say, make sure the assignee is Matt, and only continue if that's the case. Matt is assigned to this particular lead, so it would continue. Then I can make it specific to a person, but the vast majority of the time, it will be all leads that have changed stages in a particular pipeline that you could set up, or regardless of assignee or user. So admins are the ones that have access to do this, have access to set up integration. So they have an API key. So the admin's API key is what needs to be used. So if you're an admin user, then you can do that. And yeah, so I'd encourage obviously the admins to be the one to set these up. No one else will have access to your API key. And then also logging on the LeadSimple end, we keep track of everything that happens and what API key is used. And obviously that API key is tied to your user, so we know who has done what and when. So if there's any, if you ever want to audit that, then we have that data. All right, great question. Really appreciate that. That's definitely a good thing to clarify. So yeah, hopefully this gives you all a great, just at least whets your appetite. I could go on, and obviously I'm sure many of you would love to jump on the phone and actually work through some of these. And that's why we'll have more videos on these specific integrations that we think are the most valuable. And ideas just keep piling in different of the clients that we work with, many of which are under that we're consulting with right now, we're doing this for. So it's something that we continue to learn and get ideas from you guys. So we think it's awesome. Any feedback you guys have on how to make it simpler or better, we are open ears. LeadSimple very, very much takes customer feedback seriously, and we do our best to prioritize it in the product pipeline. So if you have any ideas or cool integrations, and some of this too, ultimately these types of integrations might become with LeadSimple. Another one I didn't mention is creating a process off of a Google form or a Jot form, or updating a process off a Google form or a Jot form. That's super powerful as well. I know many of you use electronic forms to collect data. Ultimately, I'd like to see that will likely be possible within LeadSimple as well, or at least a very tight integration with a forms provider, because we see that as super valuable to be able to integrate that very well into your process. But via Zapier, for now, you can actually do that in a really cool way. So yeah, we're running up on time, so I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. I'm really appreciative of everyone that jumped on. Not a ton of questions today, so I guess you guys are all pretty boring and on the slower end today, but I am too, so that's okay. Hopefully it wasn't too boring, or and hopefully insightful to see what's possible. And I really would love to hear back from any of you that are interested in doing more in Zapier. And any questions, feel free to reach out to support@leadsimple.com or directly to me at zach@leadsimple.com. And our support is always in the bottom left or right-hand side of LeadSimple as well. That you can reach out via chat, and we try to respond as quickly as possible. So feel free to reach out. And again, we'll have the follow-up here. Recording will be here. And looking forward to seeing what you guys do, as well as supporting you as you seek to add automation to your business. Thanks again all for coming, and we'll be talking later.